Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. So this is one of his standalone books, so I'm going to pretty much keep it fairly contained to just this book. We're going to do like a quick non-spoiler section, then talk a little bit about spoilers, but I don't think I really need to go into too many spoilers to tell you how I felt about the book. But yeah, in general, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and if you'd like to support the channel in another way, you can go ahead and check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. So with that being said, let's begin. So, The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. So I finished the First Law trilogy, and I've read Best Served Cold, which I really enjoyed. So now I'm on to the second of the standalones, The Heroes. So I'm starting to notice a pattern in the standalones. I know it's only two so far, so it's hard to say it's a pattern, but I'm starting to think that I kind of get the idea of what he's doing. So, this is, of course, a grimdark story. It's very much a grimdark story, and it is essentially a battle. The entire story just takes place during a battle that takes place over the course of 3 days at this location that's fairly similar to Stonehenge, but it's called the Heroes. It's like a ring formation of stones and stuff, and it's like this big hill in this area. So it essentially becomes like the thing over which everyone's fighting for. You know, they're trying to capture the best ground and, keep the high ground and that kind of stuff. So the entire thing is just a very detailed battle over the course of 3 days, being told from the perspective of six different characters, three of which are on one side and the other three on the other side. And again, this is the Union versus the North, because it's been roughly 8 years, less than 10 years, since the end of the First Law trilogy, where the North and the Union were fighting. And of course, they're back at it again. So I'm also starting to understand that this is like a theme among these cultures. Like, they're always going to be fighting, probably well into the next trilogy and stuff. So yeah, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about it. Like I've mentioned before when I talked about military fantasy, I'm not a big fan of battles, like this kind of very detailed battles and like military details and like the minutia of that kind of stuff. I really like the big picture battles, where you just got two, opposing armies kind of run against each other, and you kind of understand it from like a above, bird's eye view kind of a thing. Like, I'm very much used to those kind of battle sequences where we see how they affect the plot and how they affect the world and stuff on a grander scale. I'm not very used to these, stories that like will go right into the mud and make you feel like, you can feel these 3 days. Like, you can feel the passage of time very like clearly and stuff, and you can feel the effort, the blood, sweat, and tears and stuff that goes into like these kind of battles and stuff. And I love that aspect of it because it's a really cool thing that I haven't really experienced, and it's something I also haven't experienced in fantasy. So I think it's kind of cool from like an academic perspective. But in terms of what I enjoy, I don't really enjoy that stuff. I've even taken a break from the Powder Mage trilogy because the last book, the second book in it, just gets very military detail heavy, and it just took me like out of it. So I was expecting probably about the first third or so of this book, like I was going to end up taking breaks. I was going to take a lot of breaks, and it was going to take me a while to finish this book. But the thing that Joe Abercrombie is able to do that a lot of other people aren't able to do is he can always write compelling characters. Like, even though like his main thing, well, at least as far as my perception is, his main thing is like these very morally gray characters. That doesn't seem to be a huge emphasis in this one. Granted, the characters are quite morally gray. They're, typically more morally gray. But because we're sitting in the perspectives so completely, and we have like greater understanding of the two sides of the battle from previous books, it's harder for me to see it as very morally gray because they're just so staunchly loyal to the side that they're on. So from their perspective, in their POV, they're basically heroes, which this book also has a lot of really interesting things to say about the idea of being a hero, like what that actually means and like what do you get for being a hero and that kind of stuff. I really love it because those are like mature kind of the perspectives that are shown about that idea and stuff in this book is a very kind of mature kind of experienced kind of perspective on the idea, instead of that youth idealism kind of thing that most people have when they think of things like being a hero in battle and stuff. So sorry, this is already a little bit all over the place, but it's kind of it's your stream of consciousness. It's kind of it's how I like to do stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and continue. But I noticed one of the big things that I noticed. At least I hope it remains consistent. It seems like these three standalones are essentially going to be Joe Abercrombie showcasing different aspects of his grim dark writing and basically using a standalone book to further emphasize it. So I mentioned this in my Best Served Cold review, but in Best Served Cold, these characters are incredibly morally gray. You would expect to be kind of in a perspective of, very much on the side of the main protagonist who's trying to get her revenge and everything, which you kind of are, but you really very clearly recognize that these are not good people. Even the group that she gathers together and stuff, like, they don't even trust within their own group and stuff. So, like, these are very, like, morally ambiguous kind of people. And he made it in such a way where, like, you can tell these people are, not great people. Like, you probably wouldn't really trust them or anything, really truly want to hang out with them, but they're just very fascinating to read. They're very, he creates basically a page turner situation. You really know what you want to know what they're going to do next. Like, it's very much that kind of thing. But in this one, he has that along with you basically, whenever we're in a perspective, regardless of which side the character's on, when we're in that perspective, I immediately feel for their struggle and what they're trying to do. I don't really see like, I think it's because I understand the North and I understand the Union. So in a way, I kind of want both of them to win. I don't really like that they're fighting again, but it also is like one of those things. Like, yeah, of course they're fighting again. So it's interesting to me. This is more so a huge emphasis on the way in which Joe Abercrombie writes his grim, dark battle sequences. He did that in the first Law trilogy. He did that in Best Served Cold and stuff, like where doesn't hold back on the gore, doesn't hold back on any of the different types of experiences that the soldiers would have in battle, like doesn't hold back on the effort of it and clawing for every inch of ground, like all of that kind of stuff. He doesn't hold back on it, but he doesn't go hyper focused detail into it in the other standalone. But in this one, he can just, fill the entire book with it. And so that seems to be the primary goal of it. The Best Served Cold was to show that these are some very morally duplicitous characters, but they're all very fascinating and they're very much, fun to read. So here is like, here's this all the details of the battle, but we're not going to hyper focus on the moral ambiguity of the characters. So I kind of like that as a way to just hyper emphasize his skills. So even though I don't like these kind of battles, books with this much battle stuff in it and this much military minutia and all this, I still think he did a really good job with it, to the point where I think the characters basically kept me in it. I wouldn't have kept going had the characters not been so interesting and compelling. And I love that he uses the 6 characters essentially as a way to explore different aspects of different types of people who go into battle, different perspectives. People who are trying to like regain what they lost, or people seeking glory and trying to become king or whatever. Some people just, basic loyalty to their fellows and that kind of stuff. So I love that he like will pick and choose and like have these people emphasize these different points and these different perspectives on battle and war and stuff like that, which again goes in with his characters. His characters are really like the linchpin for his writing, I think. So I guess as far as the battles and stuff, like just the detail with which he writes them and like the grittiness and just the prolonged, it feels prolonged, but like I wouldn't really say any of the actual battle sequences are like drawn out. But to me, it just feels prolonged because it's just, we're so steeped in it in this story. And to me, that's kind of exhausting. So for me, I would have to say the military aspect and the battle aspect of the story, I appreciate more than I liked. Because like I said, I'm just not a huge fan of that level of militaristic action and stuff. But like, I really appreciate it. And I appreciate it more than I just plainly enjoyed it, because it's just done so skillfully and it's done like artfully. Like there's details about latrines and just like all kinds of stuff. It's just all the little military minutia, just tiny things. Just like like military forms and stuff, and like who to put where and like who's your best person. Like even just this kind of this idea of like there's this one person that was, I can't remember which character, but he was like fairly inexperienced and he was leading a group of people and stuff, and he was just like waiting till the force of the Union was coming at him and stuff. And I think it was the Union, I might be mixed up, but like he was waiting for the force of people to come, and he didn't know exactly when to tell his archers to fire because he doesn't have a good grasp of like the range of those archers. So he just kind of was like, I guess all right, go ahead. Like, so it's like that kind of idea is really interesting to think about, because I don't think too much about that kind of aspect because there's almost always archers in these kind of battles and fantasy and stuff. And like the thought of when they, get close enough to be in range, thinking about the fact that the commander needs to understand that distance before he gives the order and stuff. Like you never think about the fact, what if he has no idea the range of his archers and he just has them launch all the arrows? Like so, a good number of the arrows fall into the field between the two fighting people until the enemy catches up and stuff. So just different little things like that. I think it's fascinating because it's stuff I would have never thought of, but it's again, it's just, it's all wrapped into this thing that I don't generally enjoy. But again, because it's Joe Abercrombie, it's basically an exception to the rule because he makes it kind of fascinating because of the perspectives that you're sitting in. So one of the cool things too about these standalones is we often see characters that we've already met before, and we get quite a few of them in this one. So we get the guy who used to be Giselle's like bodyguard or whatever. That guy Gorst, and I think that's how you say it. And he basically one of his goals is like he just kind of want to regain what he lost. He want to be back where he was and stuff because he more or less got screwed over. That's how he lost his position and stuff. And he was scapegoated or whatever. So like everyone has like their own particular goals and stuff. And so apart from him, like we get people like Dogman and Shivers and Crow Black Dow and like those characters. Like these are all Northmen characters that we met before or heard about or that were side characters and stuff like that. Like Shivers, like I believe it was Shivers that was basically trying to be a good person and then basically gave up on it because the world just kept putting him in violent situations and stuff. So now he's just back in battle and stuff. He's not even like one of the main characters, but him just being around killing people and doing all this kind of stuff again, you're like, well, I guess that effort to just, move on didn't really work out. So like it's kind of interesting to see the continued journey of a lot of these different characters and where they end up, even though a lot of it is like they keep trying to change or grow, develop, and all this kind of stuff, and it keeps coming to the same. Because like the North in general, like even after Bethod, like all that stuff that was happening in the First Law trilogy, the first one and stuff, you would think, okay, like that's been handled and stuff, and then they'll just like, no, it's just different people cropped up in the same positions, and they're basically making the same decisions, and it's the same stuff that just keeps happening over and over and stuff. And I like the fact that a lot of the Northmen, Joe wrote a lot of the characters in kind of such a way where they accept that. Like when they get a new chief or whatever, they're like, okay, whatever, like you're just as good as the last guy, whatever. Like it's almost like their loyalty is flippant, but it's like very like hard line. Like when they have a chief, like the person, like the king of the Northmen and stuff like Bethel was, there's people that would just like super, super loyal to him, but then there are other people that just like take it or leave it kind of a thing. And like, I think that's kind of an interesting aspect because like we kind of see that in the forefront, like being brought in, especially at the end of the book. Like we really, really see that like being brought to the forefront, which is just kind of an interesting thing to me. Okay, so this part I'm gonna have to go into spoilers because I want to just talk spoilers about some of the other characters that pop up and the thing that really made the book enjoyable for me. I would have been very mid-level on the book beforehand had this part not happen, but I am like completely jazzed about it because of this, so I have to definitely put it in spoilers. But to close out the non-spoiler section, I really do think this is a good book. I really love the characters. I love Joe Abercrombie's characters. I think the plot is very concise, and if thin, it's kind of thin, but it's very concise. It's very straightforward. The pacing is really good because we start to ramp up. Like each day of the battle, like it feels like the pacing picks up. Day one is kind of like whatever, like we're getting our footing and all this kind of stuff, and then like it picks up, and then we get to like this really good, like the really solid, even though it kind of ends fairly suddenly, but like it kind of picks up really nice. So I do like the pacing, and I really love the way the story concludes. I've already said I really like the characters. I think Joe's writing on characters is just like near second to none. Like he has this way of writing characters that you would not like on paper, but somehow they're so compelling to read. I don't really understand how he does it. It's a magic trick, but it's really cool. And again, like all these books, the world building is very shallow in this story. It is it's pretty much just only thing we really know is about this field that they're on, about the heroes and stuff. And like there's kind of some implications about the stuff in the deep past that intersects a little bit with the magic and stuff. So there's like a little bit of it, but as a world building magic system nerd, not nearly enough for me. So that part is like definitely lower on the list. Before we get into spoilers, I guess I'll go ahead and give my star rating in case no one wants, or in case you don't want to go into the spoiler section. So for this one, I have to give it like a 3 out of 5 stars because The military part of it and the fact that it's just like all fighting, which is something I just don't really get into. Like the amount of fighting, because I really do enjoy action and all that kind of stuff in my fantasy books particularly, but like when it's just this much, it just kind of becomes white noise for me a little bit. So that kind of effect happened, and again, there's like no further explanation of the magic system, and there's no real world building. So for that, I can't give it much more than 3 out of 5 stars. It's an enthusiastic 3 out of 5 because some really cool stuff happens at the end, and the characters are a lot of fun. But yeah, for my star rating, I have to leave this at a 3 out of 5, which is definitely going to be lower than a lot of the reviews I've seen for this around YouTube. People sing the praises of this one, even more than Best Served Code, and I honestly think Best Served Code was more enjoyable. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into spoilers so I can gush about the thing that I thought was really, really cool. All right, so spoilers for the heroes. Sorry, Cal is over here. If you were taller, you could say hi. But all right, so yeah, let's go into spoilers. All right, so spoilers. My absolute favorite character pops back up, and that is Baez. I love me some Baez. That mother effer is just, oh my goodness. So I love how it was basically just a foregone conclusion that Black Dow was going to kill Crawl? No, Calder, Black Calder. Like it was just a foregone conclusion that he was going to kill him. Like I thought for a minute, I'm like, because it's kind of how Joe treats his characters. Like some of them will die unceremoniously, and then you pop to the perspective of the person that killed them and that kind of thing. Like he would just kind of cut through some of these characters in a way that it's just like in real life. So I was thinking we just follow Calder, do all this stuff. He's scheming and stuff, and he's figuring his way out. He's got that snake tongue, that silver tongue, and like he's just been like he's making his way as one of Bethal's son, even though he's not the one that everybody assumed was going to be the big wig. They thought it would be Scale, and like he was there making his way, doing his whole thing. His wife is like fostered or whatever, like with foster, she's a hostage essentially because he's so duplicitous. They're like you can't really be trusted, we're gonna kind of force it on you and stuff. But then like so everybody just know he was going into the circle and he was going to get killed by Black Dow. Like it was just going to happen. So I just basically accepted it. I was like, okay, so maybe we're just going to jump perspective or whatever. But then Shivers fucking kills him. Like Shivers like axes Black Dow in the head and like kills him and saves Calder. So the cool like Shivers kills Black Dow and basically makes Calder the default king of the North or whatever. And this is the thing I was talking about earlier about their loyalties. Everybody just kind of like, okay, well I guess it's Black Calder now. Like he's the king. Like we're not going to just go ahead and kill him because he's clearly like one of the weaker fighters among us. Like we're not just going to go and kill him and take the place and to the people who were quote unquote loyal to Black Dow and stuff, which we find out technically they weren't. They were all loyal to Baez. So like none of that even happened. So that's kind of the loyalty thing. But I also wonder if it's just an indicator that more people were being pulled, were puppeted by Baez, because we find out this whole thing is just Baez. Like the whole battle, the whole thing, the whole situation is just Baez because he had some plans to rewrite some of the maps up north. He wanted to like give the giant people, that one guy, Stranger Come Knocking, I think his name is, like wanted to give his people more land and stuff so that they can but he wants to civilize his people a lot more. So like they need, proper land and border, like that kind of thing. And then, so he was essentially taking some of the northern territory is what Baez was doing. And like, so he created this whole situation so that he could like change the ruler. And originally it seemed like his plan was going to be so that Black Dow was going to be the ruler. But then he ends up with Calder, and then Calder, because he's so slick and all this stuff, he's like, I'm not going to just give him the terms that he's, put in front of me or whatever. I'm going to make him sit on it for a minute. And then he just shows how easy it would be to have him killed. He did like to the point where like Calder couldn't even resist or anything. He just like goes along meekly, and they get him to this mass grave, and he's sitting on the edge of the mass grave, just knowing he's about to get killed, just waiting for the steel to cut into him and stuff like that. To the point he pees himself, he starts crying, he's hyperventilating. He has like what is I think would be a true real life reaction, even after all this bluster and this this pomp and circumstance he showed earlier about being brave and stuff like that and whatnot. Like all of it completely crumbles, and then Baez is just like behind him, and they set up a table so Baez can eat. And Baez is like, "Oh, you just wanted to give me time to steal on it." Like he just completely shifts the power dynamic, and you realize like he's like, okay, like I'm not like he basically just immediately signs the paper and capitulates to what Baez wanted, and I'm like, this man is a demon. I'm like, oh my god, he is so ruthless, he is so insane, and then just the absolute casual way in which he does this threat, like it's just so insane. It's so good. So I'm like, so now effectively Black Calder is completely under Baez's control. So he has another puppet king, and he's clearly got an alliance with Stranger Come Knocking. So like, is Baez just puppeting the rulers of all the countries and stuff? Like, what is he doing? Like, oh my god, he's so much fun. He's so fun. So it's so much fun. Like, so basically all the, everybody kind of gets their own epilogue at the end of the book too. There's like basically 6 epilogues. Like, the one guy gets to go back and work with Giselle again. The one guy he went to war and was like trying to go because he wanted to be a hero and stuff, and he had this conflated idea of what it meant to be, battle and stuff. But he discovered he absolutely hates it. Doesn't want anything to do with it at all. He just desperately wanted to go home. And like, that's the character I totally felt for 100%. Because that would have been me. Like, I don't want any of this. I just want to go back to my farm, like that kind of thing, which he ends up doing, which is kind of cool. But the one that I thought was like insane, like at the very end, who was it? It wasn't. I think it was. Was it Crow? Herndon Crow? There's too many names. I can't, like, only a couple of them names that I like really hold, but it was one of the older guys. God, I can't remember. I should look it. I wish I had a physical copy. But the guy who basically wanted to retire, his whole thing was like, oh, I've been in battles forever. I've fought this campaign, did this. Like, I just want to retire and stuff, right? So at the end of the battle, he gets to retire. He goes home and he like, I'm just going to be a carpenter. I'm like making stuff and doing all this, blah, 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 blah. And then some more Northmen come knock on his door like, hey, we're about to go fight. You want to join us? Let's go to war again. He's like, no, I'm retired. I'm just going to, hang out and stuff. And then he starts to think about his carpentry work and stuff. He's like, man, my stuff isn't good at all. It's very lonely and like boring here. The only time I ever truly felt alive is when I was in battle with my brothers and like all this kind of stuff. And before they can even walk probably 20 steps away, he done grabbed his jacket and grabbed his sword and ran out the door. Didn't even lock it or nothing. He's like, so I love that kind of aspect. I love that concept that Joe put in here. It's like there's the character who thought he was going to be a great warrior, thought he was going to be a hero and stuff, and then discovers war is awful and just wants to go home. And then you got this one guy who's like, he's experienced all of it, but it's permeated him so completely. It is who he is. He is a warrior. He has to go and fight. So like, even when he gets the opportunity to live a peaceful life, he just can't do it. So like, it's tragic, but it's like, you kind of understand it. So again, it all comes down to the characters. The way in which Joe writes these characters is next level. Because, like, I feel for the guy who didn't want to go to war. I feel for the guy whose life is war. I feel for the guy who wanted to do all of this kind of stuff. And then when he gets what he wanted, he gets his redemption and stuff. It's still nothing compared to the girl he had a crush on when she was actually working towards getting her husband this appointment that he doesn't deserve. So it was really kind of her in place. So she's going to be hanging out with Baez and stuff. Like, so all of that stuff, the minutia, the politicking, the character writing, the morally gray aspects of everybody, the duplicitous nature, the backstabbing, the schemes on schemes on schemes, that stuff is just great. So if I were to just grade the characters, then it'll be like a 4.5 out of 5. But like I said, I'm going to leave it at a 3 out of 5 because there were parts of the story that I just didn't really connect with. But as you can tell by the total gush session at the end, all the Baez stuff, all that stuff towards the end of the battle, I loved. I just thought it was so well done. I thought it was so much fun. And the entire thing with Baez, like it triggers my world building and like magic system brain because I just think about all the other stuff Baez is working on, all the other stuff he's been working on, all the other stuff he already has in place. Like he is just the ultimate mastermind, and I am so here for it. I really want to know the ins and outs of what he's doing, and I want there to be some kind of culminating event situation to happen as a result of it, you know? Like, I hope in the other trilogy or something like that, just some of the, like, there needs to be big magical type consequences for just the stuff he's done or something like that. I need something to, like, make it feel totally whole. So, yeah, but right now, Baez is, well, the hope that Logan eventually comes back, because a lot of people kept referring to Logan as being dead in this book, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's not dead. He's just, he fell off a cliff into a river. He's hurt, but he's Logan, so he's gonna be fine. But like, I imagine he'll pop back up, and maybe we'll get some total explanation for everything that was, Logan just in general, get explanation about him, and then get explanation about all that other stuff. So yeah, this video's been going on long enough, so I guess I'll go ahead and end it here. Have you read The Heroes? I hope you have, because this is the spoiler section. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Is Baez amazing? I think he's amazing. So yeah, let me know about that in the comments down below. And as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and check out my Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel in another way. I'm sorry, my brain is just going on the Baez stuff now. I'm just asking you a bunch of questions that I guess might be answered in the other book, so maybe I should just go ahead and pick up the next one. So yeah, I guess I will talk to you all next time. Peace.